Thank you, Anuj, for joining us today on Let's Talk Business by Realty NXT.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a delight. It's a pleasure to be on your platform.
So I want to know, and I'm sure our viewers also would like to know, that what attracted you initially to real estate domain? Like how this journey started for you?
It's a pretty interesting question. I'm a chartered accountant by profession. I did my CA, and then I discovered that it was not something that was really exciting me as much. So I went into insurance thereafter, after having qualified as an accountant. And then I practiced on the insurance side for 3 or 4 years. And then I discovered that that really wasn't my calling. I was nearly 30 by the time I stumbled on real estate. And as I stumbled on real estate, that is when I discovered is that this is really what I want to do. It was a sector which was in terms of the value very high, but in terms of maturity, still very emerging, very nascent, very fragmented. It didn't have the system processes. It didn't have the governance that was there either on the finance side or the insurance side. And I discovered is that if I was to get involved in the real estate sector, I can sort of make a mark by ensuring that this sector gets positive contribution from someone like me, rather than getting into finance or insurance, which was a lot more mature, lot more governance was already in those sectors. So I wasn't sure that how much value add I would have been able to do either in finance and insurance. As a result of which, in my sort of late 20s, early 30s, I got into real estate. And since then, I've been in this sector.
So in the beginning, when you had embarked on the real estate journey, you must have faced it being an unorganized sector because there were no policies like RERA in place, and there were no organization as such where you could, be the CREDAI wing or NAREDCO wing. Nothing was there for the committee as such. But what were the exact, key drivers behind you while seeing such kind of market in place that you wanted to start an entrepreneurial journey as well? How did the idea of coming up with Anrock started? What made you feel that this is the entrepreneurial journey I have to take upon, even seeing what kind of market is going on?
So it's a pretty interesting question. I'll divide it into two parts. One is when I entered into real estate, it was like a wild west. There were very little regulation. There was very little, I would say, respect for the customer. The stakeholders were not well governed. The legislation around governing the real estate sector didn't exist. So it was like wild west in the way that, you wanted to do the business you would do, which means is that, as a real estate developer, if you were constructing a building and you had sold it during construction, the money that you were receiving from the buyer, you could do anything with that money as a developer. You could buy a fancy car for yourself. You could buy another plot of land. You could go on holidays. It was not a must under law that that money that you had received from the home buyer was to be utilized in construction of the building. So that's why I say is that it was really, really wild west until the Real Estate Regulation Act came in. And it was interesting that from that perspective to say is that here we are in a sector where there's very little respect to the customer, and customer had very little expectation from the developer at that stage. They only wanted the house to be delivered on time. That's all that they were looking at. Not even the product or the quality, or any value add. It was just about give me my house in time. I think a lot of the defaults happened in there, as a result of which now today, fast forward, a huge amount of legislation, governance, and discipline has come in, which is the right thing because now it is moving towards maturity, towards like an industry. In the given format, much before Anrock in the late 90s, I discovered that my calling was largely entrepreneurship. So I set up a firm called as Chesterton Meghraj many years ago. And, this is, I said, in the late 90s. It was largely doing office brokerage because offices were a lot more mature than residential. And the reason they were mature is because the developers were catering to foreign multinationals. foreign multinationals went to the developers and said is, we know what we want.
Mm.
You give us what we want. If you don't give us what we want, we'll move to someone else.
Mm.
As a result of which, the foreign multinationals got what they wanted, and the developers in the bargain really learned. That's why if you look at it, these foreign multinationals, largely on the tech, move towards Bangalore, and Bangalore developers are far better, superior, well governed, well disciplined, because they learned from the foreign multinationals. And I thought, is okay, that's the segment that I should really go out and specialize, which was on the office brokerage, in Chester Meghraj, late 90s, going forward. And then 10 years later, I merged that business with Jones Lang in there. And then it was a very, very good journey, which was on the office brokerage platform. In 2014, when RERA, came in,
Yeah.
I would say that now think myself every evening that the residential sector is going to do exactly what the office sector did when the multinationals came in 20 years ago.
Mm.
Now the residential sector is going to do it because RERA has come in. So
Yeah.
fast forward, 2014 when RERA came in, that's when I sort of started to have a discussion with JLL that I wanted to move on and I wanted to build up Anrock, which was a residential broking company, because I felt is that residential had reached the threshold, which 20 years ago office had reached and had moved towards maturity. So in 2017, I left Jones Lang and set up Anrock, which is really in the residential, selling space. We sell about 21,000 homes now every year in India. So by far, the largest across the board. And the reason for us to have identified this was because we felt now the residential, given the new regulation and given the way the sector is maturing, given the way the judiciary is looking at it, given the way media is looking at it, given the consumerism, the developers and the rest of the stakeholders will need to get disciplined, and which is what we have seen in the last 3-4 years, that they have been pretty much disciplined. That's how Anrock really came in. So my origins are not really Anrock. My origins are not even residential. My origin is Chesterton Meghraj, sort of late 90s, and it is office broking. And through the transition to JLL, through that transition out of JLL to Anrock, moving from office into residential.
But what's so interesting about the Anrock journey is that the time you started this journey, there were already players like international players. As you mentioned, JLL was one of it. Didn't you feel a kind of a challenge or a competition that it would be quite hard for you to, get into the market or get the clients?
Not really. And I'll tell you why, with all modesty. Majority of the international property consultants concentrate on office brokerage.
Yeah.
In Anrock, we're really not as deep into the office brokerage as we are on the residential. Residential is 85% of our business.
Yeah.
Whilst in international property consultants, not only Jones Lang, all the others as well. If you were to look at it, it'll be like 90-95% office brokerage. So actually, we are mutually exclusive because we are like 85% residential, whilst they are 90-95% office. So, the segments are very different, because I knew that in Anrock, there is no competition because none of the international property consultants are on residential.
Yeah.
And the reason is not that there is no opportunity on the residential. Opportunity really exists, very large in the Indian real estate market. It's globally, they specialize on office.
Commercial, yeah.
So, on the commercial side. So the intent is to continue to go deeper in the office and not open up a segment which is on the residential, because globally it really doesn't, match with their expectations.
So every journey comes with a challenge and reward, especially when you're embarking on your own journey and creating your own, pathways and creating your own company. What would you say is the most rewarding point during the Anrock, where you enjoyed the most, the perks or the initiative that made you think, okay, this is a good move that I've made and this is something, I should carry forward?
I think there are 2 or 3 things that I would say is, one is that you're really redefining it. Because, what we do in Anrock, as I said, we sell 21,000 homes. It is not a cut, copy, paste of anybody else who's done it in India. So it does to my mind appear is that you're in a jungle, and there are lots of trees and plants and everything, and you're clearing the way. In the IPC world, these IPCs have existed for 200 years. So you know exactly the path that you have to follow. So you continue to follow that path. In Anarok, you're the guy who's clearing the way. Now, there's good and bad in that. Is because you're clearing the way, there are possibility that you'll fall more often in there. But the excitement is that you don't know what is there in front.
True.
And what to expect. And so the adrenaline flows 24/7 in something like this is. So that is, really from our perspective, a exciting journey. The second is, I would say, is the senior team, the senior leadership team. We've been together 2 decades. So, it is really encouraging when you've had, the senior leaders, a large part of that senior leadership together for 20 years or more.
Yeah.
That gives you a huge amount of support to do it. And third is your customers, that they genuinely see the value that you're bringing to them. Is they genuinely feel that this was a gap in the market and this gap has been really fulfilled. So it is very satisfying from a perspective that you're doing something innovative. I said you're clearing the path because nobody's done this residential in a volume manner, what we are doing it. Second is the ability to be able to have senior talent together for nearly 2 decades or over 2 decades to be able to do that. And third is for the customers, and our customers are largely developers, not home buyers, because we take exclusive mandates from the developers.
Yeah.
So they are our clients. For them to come back and say, look, this was a missing service. And we're very happy to outsource our sales and marketing to someone who specializes. And thank you for being there.
So going back to the leadership team, because it's said that having the right team leads to a successful venture. So in the initial stage, what you kept in mind when you were building your team or when you were employing the right employees, was there any kind of checklist that you went ahead with?
I think there were 2 checklists that we went ahead with. One was, many of us have been in the industry for long. God is kind. We've created wealth for ourselves. So we said is that our tagline is going to be our values, and we identified 4 values, which was integrity, ethics, transparency, and respect. These come up ahead of the value. So if somebody was to pay us more brokerage, but ask us to compromise, either on respect, and respect could be just our office colleagues. A client comes in and starts to demean our office staff or office colleague, we will say, no, we don't want to work because our values get compromised in that is. So that was the first thing, is that the talent that we wanted to bring in would understand that our values are ahead of the value. That money is important, but that is not the only thing. These are the 4 values. And if you look at our tagline, Anarok values over value, that is what it really stands at. These are the 4 values. They will always be ahead of the value. The second, we wanted to make sure that there was an emotional bonding. I think technical competence was really a third or a fourth. It was like, real estate is not a rocket science. You can teach real estate. It doesn't take long to teach real estate. But if there is no emotional connection, if there is no emotional bonding, if there's no emotional understanding, if there is no collaboration going on within the teams, then we felt is that the resource will not be able to get along with us. Sure. So those were the 2 large things, is that one, making sure that the talent who came in really understood our values and lived to our values, and it was really not just a tagline that they would just say it. They lived through that. And the second is that they were emotionally sort of involved, understood what our DNA was, understood what our culture was, understood how we work collaboratively, and that's what we looked at it. So, I mean, we've said this often, is that, people say talent is everything. We say is that not really. It is the right talent.
True.
Because if it is the wrong talent, it can really disrupt your journey in there. So it is the sort of right people, and then the right people need to get the right seat on the bus.
True.
Which means that once these people came in, what was the right responsibility for them? What was the right role what was the right authority that you would give it to them with. So,
Mm.
so wrong people off the bus,
Mm.
right people on the bus, and then once the right people were on the bus, then right people to have the correct seats. That is what the approach was.
Interesting. So tell me, the time you started Anrock, the priorities and goals from that moment till now must have changed. So what goals and priorities have changed now?
I think the macro have remained the same.
Mm.
So on the macro side, we said is whatever we do want to bring in technology because this is one of the few industries that haven't had the benefit of technology come in as yet.
True.
Other industries that you look at it, tech has really disrupted it. Whether it's food delivery or
All the
cab
e-commerce,
service or
yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
There is a huge amount. In real estate, it hasn't been. So we said is that whatever we do, we will bring in technology. So prop tech, and we've stood true till today. Is that we continue to invest. We have about 150 techies in Anrock on a full-time salaried basis who are employed as of today.
Mm.
So 6 years they've been here, and we're continuing to invest on the prop tech, and we're seeing the benefit
Yeah.
of that. Is I would not say that we are a tech company. I think we're a tech-enabled company, and I think real estate would largely be in that segment where you will have people do want to sort of physically touch and feel real estate. They'll not just buy online.
Mm.
So that's first is that we've continued to invest in technology, and that was our priority from day one. Second one was that to make sure that our customers continue to feel very satisfied, and we have repeat clientele come in, which we've been pretty successful. Third is that we said is that we will largely be on the residential. As I said, is 85% of our business is today residential, but we're now growing outside the residential. So it is what else can be done on the non-residential part of it is. It wasn't on day one the play, but as we have continued to grow, we have discovered that our client, which is the developer, is asking for that service, saying is, can you raise debt for us? Can you raise equity for us? Can you help me buy land? Can you value the property for me? Can you provide a best land use feasibility? So those are the services that we have added, which at the start we were like really residential unit sale and marketing. But given the expectation of the client, we have continued to expand it to move into the non-residential part of it, which wasn't there at the start. But these two things we've been very, very clear is that we want to delight our customer and want to repeat customer. And second is we want to continue to invest in technology because we're seeing benefit. It is not for valuation, as I'm saying is clearly, we're tech enabled. We're not even tech. So it's not about that, no, we are a prop tech and we want to be valued as a tech. I think we're amongst the few companies who've invested so heavily in tech, yet we remain very profitable. I mean, there was a report that came out. There were a number of prop tech companies, and I think there were only a few, one or two amongst 10, 15 companies, and we were one of those which had a profit against that. And we're saying this tech is for bringing productivity, for bringing efficiency, not necessarily for just doing a valuation of the company.
So looking back on your journey, what is the one thing or a thing that you feel you could have done it differently, especially when you have learned so much now?
I think lots of things that could have been done differently. But it is a journey. If you're here and you want to go here, as an entrepreneur, and you're an entrepreneur, you would have started from a certain point, and you want to go to that point. It's not necessarily a straight line. It'll go zigzag, 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 zigzag. When you look at the rear view mirror, you may find that there was an easier way to get in there. Given a choice today, I would have still taken this route. And the reason I say I would have taken this route because we've enjoyed the journey. As they say, it is not reaching the destination, and maybe we'll never reach the destination. It is about enjoying the journey. And the journey we want to enjoy. We want to do the innovation as we go on, rather than say is that if given an opportunity, you would go one straight line. I don't think we would have enjoyed that. And then once you reach destination, you would be like, really, is that what it is? Today, you're enjoying it because you're enjoying the journey.
True.
You know, it's like going on the hills, that you are enjoying the drive rather than saying I can fly and I can reach that particular point.